Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to have a look at the AML-90. This is a new little armoured car which is on the update 1.95 dev server, and what you find it at is rank 4, battle rating 6.7 for the French. It has an 8-second reload on its 90mm, the DEFA F1, and you find it between the AMX-13 and the AMX-1390. And also the Char 25T is now between the M4A4SA50 and the Lorraine 40T. So this is breaching the two AMX-13s, and it definitely has a hell of a punch to it when it comes to its 90mm. Gun depression is 8 degrees as well, which is nice, and the turret rotation speed of 21 degrees per second is good enough for a 6.7 vehicle. But once again, we're seeing another hit into the 6.7, 7.0 era of light tanks or armored cars which have access to a very, very powerful gun. This kind of reminds me of when the Italians were added, and we had, of course, the Orbal 74 with its 90mm cockerel. The French version, being this AML-90, is pretty much the same. It's obviously slightly different in certain ways, but it follows the same purpose. Very high penning round, very aggressive machine, and also good for scouting. The other thing about it as well is it has access to two 7.5mm Mach 31 machine guns, one as a coaxial and one on top. It also has 4 smoke grenade launchers in the general French sense, where they're mounted on the back of the turret here, and also it has a 3-man crew. Now the thing is, survivability for this machine is incredibly low. This machine at most has 20mm of armor, and that's the damn gun. If you take away the gun, you're looking at 10mm of armor on the hull and 12mm of armor on the front of the turret. So you're going to get killed by absolutely everything in this. So you're either going to have to shoot first, or you're going to have to play passive like a scout. And in my opinion, this is kind of a pure scout for French at 6.7, which is really nice to see, if I'm quite honest. So with the AML-90 being at a rank 4 for the French, it does have some stiff competition with stuff like the Char 25T. So what sets it apart? I mean, pretty much the gun and its ballistics. You have a Heat FS shell, which goes at 750 meters per second, so it's not incredibly fast, but it's fast enough, and also has 320mm of pen with 277 and 160 respectively, 877 grams of explosive mass as well. 670 grams of explosive mass and 877 grams of TNT equivalent. Also has access to a HE shell and a smoke shell. But I think I would just run the Heat FS and maybe a few smoke shells to try and get out of dodge when everything goes wrong. It obviously has access to the scouting mechanic in the game, being what it deems as a tank destroyer. I would say this is much more of a light tank than a tank destroyer, but it still has improved optics and airstrike, showing that it will have the scouting mechanic, on top of course, the smoke grenades being a rank 3 modification. But it does join a lot of other vehicles in this update which have their best ammunition as their stock ammunition, and I really like this. So when we look at stuff like the Roycats, even stuff like the M60A3 being added to the American tree, they have very powerful ammunition as their starter ammunition. The only one which so far has kind of bucked that trend is, of course, the Bulldog, and also I suppose the Type 90B with its Heat FS, but it's still, very good. The engine that powers the AML-90 is the 90 horsepower engine you see here, running at 4700 RPM. And the reason why the engine is so small is because, well, the vehicle itself is small, only 5.5 tons in total. This means that it can go 90 kilometers an hour. I'm not sure if I believe that. I haven't been able to get it up to 90 kilometers an hour, but on this four-wheel chassis, it definitely does canter around when it wants to. Also, with the fuel tank at the bottom and this very interesting transmission, it means that it also can go backwards at 17.2 kilometers an hour. I would rather have like 80 forward, like 30 back, but obviously I'm used to kind of the French tanks which are able to go as fast forward as they are backwards, so it's going to need a different playstyle when it comes to this little small vehicle right here. So yeah, that is something to definitely think about. There's no stabilizer on the gun, so it's just one of those 90mm, which is going to waft about all over the place until you fire it. But with the penetration of the HeatFS being 320, you will be able to go through some of the big, heavy the big heavy machines that you meet at 6.7, T29s, T34s, the Tiger 2H, the IS2s, all of these will get eaten by the 90. The only question is how much damage will the 90 do after it pens the vehicle that it's facing. So that is something that we will have to work out over time with this vehicle. How effective of a round does it actually have? So customization wise, it has access to a lot of really nice skins. The AML-90 follows the trend of a lot of these French vehicles that have really nice skins. They actually have some of the best skins in game, in my opinion, especially for specific vehicles. Like, you have some really nice tricolors and bicolors, and even the basic ones have a nice little tinge to them. So overall, you could pretty much pick any of these. You even have the three-tone carc if you really want to, have a bit of the good old, EU area camouflage. But for me, the bicolor desert is always the way to go. I kind of like the striped look of it, and also, the feel of it. So let's get into a test drive and let's just buzz it around while having a chat. So this machine is very much more of a pure scout compared to some of the other machines that we've seen from the French in rank 4. One of the things that has definitely been true of the French when it comes to rank 4 is they have a lot of firepower. Whether you look at the Char 25T, whether you look at the Lorraines, whether you look at the AMX40s, what they have is just a ton of stopping power because they have a great autoloader on board. They also have a great amount of speed behind them. This machine, it has the speed, it has the gun, but it struggles with the reload. It also struggles with the basic armor. One of the things that always takes people by off guard is stuff like the Char 25T and the Lorraine, where normally they can actually soak a shot. This thing is not going to soak a shot. This thing is a matchbox car with a 90mm on it. You can see the gun itself, even up to 40mm, is actually pretty stable, which is kind of nice, but the reload is the real difference between this and something like a Char 25T or, something similar to a Lorraine. You're not going to be two-shotting a machine that quickly with this. You're going to instead having to shoot and then maybe back out because of the fact that you're not going to, just be one-shotting machines all over the place. You will have to be a little bit more tactful with your shooting. At the end of the day, though, you already have machines at this level that can do that. You have stuff such as the Char 25T. You have stuff like the Lorraine, the AMX M4s, even the AMX 1390. Which is probably the closest comparison that I have to this machine, apart from it's tracked and the gun is a lot less stable than this one. It also has an autoloader, so you can see, there's positives and there's strengths and weaknesses to either side. But for me, in most situations, I'd rather take this thing just because of the stability of the gun over, what we have already seen, and also the general speed. As long as we're not in sand or mud conditions, then it's the AMX 1390 every day of the week. But the main thing to understand is this is a go-kart. You can have a lot of fun in this. You can run around with it. You can be able to scout a bunch of people and just have a ton of fun. It isn't a vehicle that's going to really carry games a lot. You can see it doesn't really have enough ammo to do so. I'm already down to the HE. It only has, I believe, 20 rounds of ammunition that it can hold. I'll just check that for you so I don't make a burk of myself. But the main thing is, it's only got 20 rounds of ammunition. So overall, if you're being really tactful about it, let's say that is about, maybe 10 kills. Or maybe 15 if you're really good, or maybe even 20 if you're insane. But the main thing to understand is it doesn't have a lot of, killing power behind it. And there's nothing wrong with that. With the advent of scouting in War Thunder, there is now different playstyles in the game. You have playstyles which are more designed to be passive. You have playstyles which are more designed to support your team. And this machine definitely suits one of those playstyles. It is what I would see as a pure scout, with something of a hell of a gun on top of it. It's instead of the gun being used in an aggressive way or as an aggressive force, it should be used as a defensive thing to get out of dodge once everything goes wrong. You can see me shooting these medium tanks from the Soviets, and generally I'm not killing them in one shot. I'm, you know, hurting the driver, I'm hurting the fuel tank, and even if I shot them in the correct places, you know, around here, we're not looking to really destroy the vehicle. Instead, what's happening is, you know, we're just doing a little bit of damage to them, because the round itself really isn't big enough to do, you know, a massive amount of damage. And also you have the problem with bushes and stuff like that you have to look into. So there's a lot of things which are kind of holding back this machine to being a proper job tank killer. But that's okay, because not everything has to be a tank killer. Some things are really good as scouts. Some things fly about the map, capture zones, scout machines, and you just have fun in. You also, you also call artillery in, and you support the team. And when the aircraft start coming in, you try and find a hole to hide in, because you'll die instantly. But that is something that you will have to watch out for. Very much similar to a lot of the machines actually in this update. You know, the STRV, the SAV, this machine, also some of the others. They're just going to get eaten by planes. But yeah, no, that is an unfortunate thing. But at the end of the day, it's just a fun little go-kart with a 90mm on it, just like the Italian vehicles. So if you enjoyed those Italian vehicles, you know you're going to enjoy this little go-kart. And France has a ton of vehicles like this. Little vehicles with large guns, which were designed just to fly around the place. The ELC series is one of those. You know, there's 4 different ELC, even 90s out there, which would be really nice to see in the game. And it's awesome that we have this vehicle in here to kind of represent that style of play. But don't expect to carry, don't expect to take over maps in this, and also don't expect to do well on rough terrain. Instead, this is a situational vehicle which is very much a scout first and a tank killer second. Of course it can be fun, and it's going to be my pick for the vehicles, at least in the ground section, for this update. Just because it's going to be lower in RP cost, I think it's going to be a lot more fun than a lot of the other vehicles, which may be a bit more of a slog. So for me, this is the one I'm going to pick and have fun in this update with. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyins Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.